What's up, Brix Squad? Thanks for clicking on today's video. I got my man Philip Esteban with me today, and he's going to be teaching us both the proper technique of the squat. Now, the squat is a very, very important exercise, if not the most important exercise there is.
Everybody's body is different, so everybody's legs are going to be shaped differently. Their femur, the top part of the leg, is going to be longer than somebody else's. The tibia might be longer than somebody else's. Even the torso might be different. Your torso and my torso are going to be different. So with that, when you are actually folding down or crouching down, everybody's movement is going to be different. So the way everybody approaches the squat is going to be totally different.
I'm a new client, don't know anything about a squat. What do I do?
Well, actually, the first thing that I would do is actually have you just squat with your body weight.
Okay.
It's not necessary to always put a weight on somebody's back, because really you just need to learn how to contract the muscles and actually go through the movement before anything.
Okay.
All right, so if I were gonna have you go ahead and stand, I would go ahead and stand about shoulder width apart with your heels. And when I say shoulder width apart, I'm meaning your heels, not any other part of your...
So my heels should be shoulder width apart?
Yes, yeah. So basically you wanna think about your shoulders, your hips, your knees, and your heels. So you want everything basically to be stacked at this point, okay? So what I actually want to do with you is something that I was shown a long time ago and I think is really cool. I just want you to go ahead and sit down to the ground. Go ahead and squat down. If you can, just go ahead and stay there. Okay, so obviously we could probably stay here for a while.
Yeah.
There's no tension whatsoever on the legs.
No.
And this is a leg exercise. So if you know the adage, ass to grass, we'll get to that part too. Okay. So obviously we're going ass to grass right now, but there's no tension.
No.
Okay, well, but I'll get to that. So what I want you to do is go ahead and raise up 3 inches. Okay, so do you feel a little bit tension?
Yes.
Okay, so what I'm trying to show you is once we go to a certain point, our leg muscles are actually gonna shut off essentially, okay?
Oh, yeah.
So we wanna go ahead and keep and stay in that range right there, all right? And that's what I mean by tension. We want tension as much as possible because we're trying to build muscle.
Yeah.
So go ahead and raise up. There we go. And then as you go higher, the less tension again. Yeah. So if we really want an effective squat, we want to go ahead and try and stay in this tensioned range. So try and stay right there. And this is a great form. And we'll get to form in a little bit. But go ahead and lower yourself, but also actively squeeze these leg muscles. And go ahead and go down, and remember, we want to stay with the tension, and then go ahead and go up, but actively keep this muscle engaged as much as possible.
Yikes, I've never felt that. Well, so let's get into the form.
You want to think about the core. The core is where you're going to be carrying the weight up here, up on your shoulders, okay? Yep. So from here, you want to make sure that everything is nice and ready for you to be able to load a bar on here or have some sort of weight, right? So from here, we want to make sure that everything is nice and in line from the midsection up, all right? So from there, you want to make sure the core is nice and tight and straight. Okay. We don't really want to have any over curvature or any slouching, okay? And this is a personal preference of mine, is the positioning of the head, okay? A lot of people, especially high school athletes growing up, you get told to look at the sky when you deadlift or you squat. What a lot of people have found is that if you're to do that, you almost right away put some curvature in the spine naturally. And it kind of makes it a weak position for you to load weight onto your back.
Got it.
So if you're able to keep everything nice and tight and in line, so if you were to keep your head like that and tuck your chin, you're actually able to keep your spine a little bit straighter and tighter a little easier. Okay, so
I want to keep everything in line. I don't want to look up, I don't want to look down, just kind of a neutral position.
Yes, nice straight ahead. You might even want to tuck your chin just a little bit, just like that. And then from here, I want you to go ahead and just bend the knees just slightly, enough to get a little tension on the quads here. You can feel it. And then as you go down, I want you to think about breaking at the hips. You're going to point your butt back and your knees are going to go out. Nice flat back from the top of the head all the way to the tailbone. We got a nice flat upper body. And so when he has his weight up here, it's going to be a nice, really solid surface for that to sit on. So go ahead and go down, and as you go down, I want you to think about actually grinding your feet outward. So, and when I say that, you should be actually engaging the glutes a little more, and then actively squeezing the quads. Okay?
It's burning, bro.
Yeah, so when you do that, you actually want to think about just squeezing the entire way down and the entire way up. Okay? Just so we can keep that tension on there, because what I find is a lot of people like to drop it like it's hot. They just get the weight on the bar, and they don't like this painful feeling of having the quads engaged and the lactic acid building up and basically on fire, you know? And their first reaction is to go ahead and get weight on their back and then fall as fast as they can. And then they go ahead and press it up. You're just falling and landing with this weight, and then all of a sudden you're catching it. So it's basically like you're driving full speed and then you hit the brakes and you're expecting your car to be fine every time you do it, you know what I mean? So how do we control it? We flex the muscles as much as we can to really lower that sucker and control it down as much as possible. If you need to, there's no shame in lowering the weight. That's why we're starting with no weight, because we want to go ahead and get as much control, as much experience in just this form of going down and up and flexing the muscles before we actually put weight on. There's no shame in dropping the weight, no shame whatsoever. As far as bar positioning, you really just want to get it on there as comfortably as possible if you're just starting out. There are differences, but we won't get into that today. So from here, you just want to make sure that you have a nice, tight, stable back. Make sure the traps are there to go ahead and place it on there. A lot of people are uncomfortable here because they don't really do what you're doing, where you're actually squeezing the back up here and actually flexing these muscles to actually rest this on here, okay? You just want this to be, as far as arm position, you just want this to be as solid as possible and as stable as possible, okay? Now from here, what I would tell you to do is go ahead and make sure your feet are about shoulder width apart, just to start. Feet placement, where your toes are. At first, I would just say go ahead and put it wherever's comfortable for you. It doesn't have to be straight on. It could be slightly outward. I wouldn't go too crazy as far as having your feet really, really straight or really, really out. I would probably just put it wherever they fall at first, okay? So from here, I want you to make sure your posture is nice and tall. You're nice and tight from the waist up, nice and straight. And then what we're gonna do is go ahead and have you bend your knees slightly, just to find that tension, okay? From here, I want you to go ahead and actively try and flex the quads. There you go. And then go ahead and lower down nice and slow. There we go. There we go, very nice. Go ahead and get a slight bend in the knee. There you go, pause. Make sure there's tension in the quad. Actively flex it, think about flexing it. Go ahead and slowly control yourself down. Think about pulling yourself down, not just lowering yourself. And by pulling, you might actually want to think about using the back of your leg, your hamstrings, to actually try and pull yourself down into that position. There you go.
So when the person is driving upward, are they pushing on the ball of their feet, on their heel? What are they driving back upwards through?
As far as driving off of the feet, you want to think about driving off of the heels mainly. You still want a very flat, stable foot, and you might want to think about actually driving towards the outside of the foot here, okay? And that's for a couple reasons. You doing that allows you to keep the knees out, because we never want the knees to fall inward, okay? It's just not a very stable placement for the knees, and it sometimes causes injury if you are falling inward that way. I put my feet about shoulder width apart. I like to keep my feet just slightly outside of straight, because I really actively drive my feet or twist my feet outward as I do this. So we're going, I find my tension here, keep my head nice and still, keep everything nice and straight from the hips up. And from there, I'm squeezing the quads, squeezing the glutes, keeping this nice and tight the entire time. And as I go down, I'm actively twisting my feet outward off of the heels. Going down, down, down. And this is my range of motion right here. So if I were to go down further, my quads are pretty much shutting off. As you see, I'm pretty much almost shaking because I am squeezing my quads so much. I'm squeezing my muscles as I do this. And honestly, I can make a workout out of this because all I'm trying to do is squeeze my muscle as much as possible as I do this. And that's why you really don't need too much weight, especially if you're starting out, because you could just do this all day. Do 20 of these, 3 rounds, 4 rounds, and you'll be exhausted. Your legs are going to be toasted.